All right, welcome back. If you're still watching, this is The Beam, coming to you live from our studios in Abuja. I'm in conversation with Professor Freedom Onoha, who joins us via Zoom, and we're discussing the future of warfare and security. Professor, let's continue from where you stopped.
Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is that Nigeria as a country is facing multidimensional security challenges, whether you are talking about the maritime domain, the land domain, or even if you want to say the air domain. Every aspect of this country is facing different types of security challenges. And across these theaters of conflict, across this domain, the country has enormous opportunity to leverage AI to begin to dominate the spaces. I give example in the maritime domain, for example, where we are having that lingering issue of illegal oil bunkering, and to a lesser extent, now we have suppressed maritime piracy. The Nigerian Navy operates Falcon Eye, which is very critical. It's a very robust, sophisticated maritime domain awareness capability that the Nigerian Navy has invested on. But I also think that it's going to up its sophistication, it's going to up its operational successes, the more we're able to embrace, and integrate artificial intelligence, because then it reduces the speed, of which you can make critical decisions, right? What it could take an operative 3 hours to decide on, AI can enable you to make a decision in a split of a second, because AI can give you, for example, the length of the ship, the size of the ship, and potentially the speed of the ship if it's operating on your river, on your water. The same thing when the AI, you do pattern analysis, terrain analysis, it can give you an idea of potential movement that suggests to be pirate action group, and you can easily vector, your forces to neutralize that. If you also use AI to do terrain analysis, for example, it will give you an idea of what is happening in the forested regions, where bandits and terrorists are now taking a safe havens. So, in fact, the capability and the advantages of using AI, in terms of planning, in terms of operation, in terms of surveillance, in terms of reconnaissance, in terms of targeting, is quite enormous to enable Nigeria to deal with some of the security challenges it's having. But I'm saying that for us to sustainably, for us to effectively deal with this, we must take a two-pronged approach. The first approach is that we must quickly prioritize, the acquisition, the training of our forces to be able to do this, use these technologies. But more importantly, we need also to look inwardly, to begin to develop indigenous capabilities to be able to deal with some of these issues, because it is only through indigenous capabilities that you can develop technologies that are more suited to your peculiar environment and your peculiar needs. And those kind of technologies become much more nimble rather than being generic in terms of the theater you wish to deploy them.
I love how you just bring me to the next question, because you talked about indigenous capabilities, and we have startups like Terra Industries, and we saw the partnerships they're having right now with the Nigerian Army, and investments coming in from virtually everywhere around the world. The question then becomes, can they truly transform Nigeria's security landscape, or will the systems, that system challenge that we have, that systemic challenge that always comes up when it comes to projects in Nigeria, will it, cripple them and limit the things that they can achieve?
Well, amidst Nigerian tragedy lies enormous opportunity. And I say this because this country has battled different security challenges. Some of those security challenges created opportunities that we will not exploit. I don't want to go far deep into history, but I want to give you two critical examples of major security challenges that created opportunities that we have missed, and I hope we don't miss it again. If you recall the Nigerian experience with the Civil War, 1967 to 1970, there is no doubt that the Biafran forces were quite legendary in their capacities in indigenous production of weapons, the Ogunigwes and stuff like that, including indigenous refining of petroleum, to fuel all kinds of machines. The Biafrans lost the war. Nigeria is still a united nation, but you can see that Nigeria also missed the opportunity because in other serious crimes, we would have actually seized that opportunity. Yes, that's a tragedy, but it's also an enormous opportunity that came from it. We could have seized that opportunity to create a hub of indigenous defense technology, either in the Southeast or anywhere in the world, that could have benefited from the breast of brains that the Biafra was able to assemble that time. Because, again, remember, in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, they said no victor, no vanquish. So we claim there's no victor, there was no vanquish, but we did not generate or do not benefit from the expertise that we had from our brothers who fought the war and lost the war. Would have put us in a pedestal now where Nigeria would have been among the top exporters of defense articles. So that is lost. Fine. The question is the lessons that is coming from that. Now we are in another level of national tragedy as a result of nearly 2 decades of terrorism, waged by the Boko Haram, Islamic states. Now we have lost a lot of very senior officers. I'm sure you know of that. We've lost a lot of civilians as a result of that. Critical infrastructures have been destroyed as a result of that insurgency. But amidst that tragedy, we can now see very young tech startups like Terra Industry coming with something that, as a nation, if we look inwardly and we are prepared to address some of the bad weaknesses that characterize our national life, corruption, number one, and I emphasize it, corruption, number one, poor elite short-sightedness, number two, lack of national consensus, number three, and the failure of government to support critical industries.
Prof, we're almost running out of time, but I have a few more questions, maybe 2 more questions for you before we go. One of those things that people are looking at is the fact that these same systems, can be turned inward for mass surveillance and political control. How do we go about this?
You see, let us not focus so much on the negative. Let's focus on the positive and deal with the negative. I'll give you a typical example. As soon as you could see that so many people are now coming to terms that the war in Iran is not going to go easy. This is because Iran was able to invest enormously and hugely in indigenous defense industry. We are not saying that Iran does not have its own issues in terms of using own surveillance that you are mentioning during the crackdown on social governance. But why would we front load issues of civil liberties when we've not even achieved the basic things we have to achieve? My argument is very simple. Let's prioritize and supporting this indigenous technology. The laws will come afterwards. We may have reasons where we may have human rights trampled upon. It is not the first time, even when we are not producing this technology. Soon as I can tell you that the Office of National Security Advisor can continuously surveil you, surveil channels and any other organization, whether you like it or not, unless you are not an object of interest. Once you're an object of interest, they can do that comfortably. That is if they're not doing it right now, or if they're not doing it against the opposition. So let us not talk about whether that can be done. Even in the United States, those are being used, right? But we're saying that if we develop that indigenous capacity, it's already an advantage. Then we can now focus on the real intellectual debate, the legal debate, and civil society will definitely mop up the kind of mass that will put the government on its toes so that government can then come up with regulations that will guide the usage of this. Whether you're going to use it to undermine human rights, I can predict, but with every sense of finality, that will be done. But I am saying we need these technologies indigenously developed before we start talking about wrong use of them.
Finally, before I let you go, Prof, there's so much to go, but let's ask you this before I let you go. The future of warfare, will it be nations winning because of their soldiers, or will it be nations winning only based on algorithms?
I think nations are going to win depending their ability to integrate the two. Let me tell you, soonest, no technology whatsoever produced in the past or going to be produced in the future that will fight the war. Somebody must sit behind the technology. If you are talking about the drones, somebody must sit behind the drones. If you're talking about artificial intelligence, somebody must develop the algorithms. So the simple truth I will say is that technology will make it that we will have less footprints in the battlefield. We'll have less footprints in the battlefield. We'll have very few footprints in the tech rooms that where these are going to happen. So you can have one operator, using the drone to exterminate almost a battalion, depending on how trained, depending on how sophisticated. Let me also sound a note of warning. Even as of 21st century, even as of today, there's already enough evidence, and Pentagon have also seen that, there's enough evidence that currently artificial intelligence may not outsmart human beings in some battle theater. I'll give you a typical example. So there was this simulation they did, in order to ascertain whether so reliance on artificial intelligence can win a battle. But you know, human actors were able to win artificial intelligence. I'll give you two examples that came out. Now, it was in the battlefield, and they are looking at a target. They developed an AI that has the capacity to identify intruders. But because the AI algorithms was doing human pattern analysis, how soonest work, how Professor Sidomono work, how human beings will work, that AI too could not even identify soldiers that disguised themselves as Christmas tree, moving slowly and was coming close to the target. That AI too could not even identify soldiers that covered themselves with carton, as if it's a refuse dump, that was also moving very close to that technology. I can assure you that AI can do a whole lot of things. It can ease the speed and scale at which we can make decisions. It can also be very, very extensive in terms of its coverage, but it is not going to knock out human beings. Rather, those who are going to win the war are those who are at the forefront of developing the AI and integrating it seamlessly with human intelligence to maintain that battle space advantage in any form of theater, in any form of domain that conflict is taking place.
All right. With that, we've wrapped up our discussion on the future of security, warfare, and technology. Many thanks to you, Prof, for coming on the program and sharing your insight on this very critical issue.
Thank you, Sunes, and do have a great day.
All right. As we close, the question remains, will technology make us safer or simply change how we experience danger? I'm Sunes Nathaniel, and as always, we're going to be leaving you with our top 5 videos of the week. Do not forget, stay curious, stay engaged, stay ready, stay prepared, and keep beaming your light where it matters the most. May this great nation continue to rise and flourish. Bye for now. This week we begin our countdown with a clip in which we see Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila telling Abejide to stay and scatter the ADC.
Is to stay in that same ADC, fight them, scatter them, hold on to your party, ADC. Do not allow them. We like what you are doing. Continue.
In 4th place, PDP chieftain Segun Sowunmi speaks on why ADC should give Atiku the presidential ticket.
You can't beat Atiku in that party. You are a dreamer.
Then what happens to Peter Obi?
Who's Peter Obi?
Coming third on our list, Pastor Jerry Eze reveals how his mother taught him to give, even as he launches a foundation. In 2nd place, the EFCC chairman, Ola Olukayode, reveals how he investigated Pastor Jerry Eze for 6 months for alleged money laundering.
I investigated this man for 6 months. Yeah, for money laundering.
For our top video this week, the police force says its men who killed a suspect in Delta State in a viral video will be tried for murder.
And they will not just dismiss him and take him to court. Investigation will be carried out. A lot of analysis will be done to know the real motive behind that shooting and also to know who sent that young man to withdraw that gun as well.
That's it on our countdown today. Join us next week for more.